Good morning, afternoon, evening, weekend. I'm not sure which one it is whenever I start this. There is a slight delay at the beginning of the videos because I have to do a mic check and double check the settings. So occasionally it starts out a little rough like that, but it's just a fluke of the system that I have to do occasionally. This is chapter 4, and I'm recording this on Friday the 13th. I'm not particularly superstitious, but it is what it is. It's Friday the 13th, so be that as it may, take that for whatever it's worth. Kind of a cold, drizzly, rainy day here in La Grande. We have a dusting of snow on the top of the mountains, snow over Meacham. I imagine it's probably similar for those of you folks up in Pendleton and Umatilla County. Winter is on its way, but the weekend is supposed to be sunny, so hopefully it'll be nice. Chapter 4 now moves into discussion about how you actually can set up your classroom for literacy learning. The first 3 chapters lay the groundwork and give you some basic information about how literacy works, how it starts with children, and foundational information. Now we talk about how we actually start doing it in a classroom. And keep in mind, we're talking about early literacy, so this is preschool level, young children. The concepts are appropriate for preschool kinds of environments and maybe kindergarten environments, but they certainly can be extended up into the earlier primary grades, 1 and 2. But they would obviously have to be modified. But the basic concepts about why and how you do things in that early literacy environment are still very appropriate and very much in play with all of this. So with that in mind, I'm going to boot up a chapter here and actually do some screen sharing and walk you through some parts of the chapter. So if you have your textbook handy, this might be a good spot for you to pause the video, go find your textbook and turn to chapter 4. It's on page 49. Or alternately, I'm going to be doing a screen share of some of the high points from the chapter, and you can just follow along on that if you wish. But if you want to go grab your textbook and follow along with where I am, this would be a good point to do that. So I'm going to pause for about 5 seconds and do a screen share and then come right back. Okay, so this should be the next piece, and you'll see that I have up on the screen here, Chapter 4, Language and Literacy Classrooms. They begin with the highlighted piece that I've got right here. They're going to describe 6 principles of literacy learning. Now this is different. This is not 6 principles of literacy development from the earlier chapters. This is 6 principles of literacy learning that guide your decision as you should make classroom activities and set up your classroom environment. Now, because the scan that you have in front of you comes from my particular textbook, I don't have a different version than you do. You'll see highlights that I have put in here and things that I've written in and comments in the margin, and that's going to be the basis for some of my conversation with you here. So if we look at these 6 elements, they give you some background information here, zone of proximal development and learning to write, an example from a child. And after they set the stage, then they begin giving you some of the basics of those 6 principles. Principle number 1, literacy emerges from social interaction. Literacy happens when people engage with other people, either with other children or adults. It doesn't just come from sitting and watching something and listening to something with no engagement or no interaction. It takes joint participation. Literacy comes out of that. 2, learning is accelerated when instruction is responsive to the needs of the individual. I gave you in last week's video the story about Glenna Sloan and how she was subjected to being, basically, as she said, my teacher untaught me how to read because the teacher was totally unresponsive to the needs of Glenna. Glenna needed more reading, not less, not going back. We need to be responsive based on the feedback. Pay attention to what's happening. What's the individual need, and then design things for that. Learning is refined through feedback. We need to give focused, descriptive feedback to kids because that's the feedback we get from them and that we give to them helps us know what it is we should be doing. We can adjust our supports based on the feedback. So are the first three. It's social. We have to be responsive to the needs of the individual, and we know what those needs are, and we refine those needs by paying attention to the feedback. Principle number 4 is right here. Learning is extended through independent practice. And I will pause and take a side comment here. Practice should only be used, independent practice should only be used when the individual has already demonstrated the ability to do it. Guided practice is when we sit and help the person through it. Think about teaching somebody how to do a task. We guide them through it. We monitor it. We give them feedback. We show them. We demonstrate. We guide them through the process of giving them feedback. That's guided feedback. But eventually, when we see that they can do it, the kid knows the basics of how to do this. Now, let the kid practice independently. Independent practice should only be used when the child has shown that they know how to do it in the first place. And independent practice is for purposes of making it permanent, to make it stronger, to make it long-lasting, to make it more efficient, maybe make it a little faster. But independent practice is for purposes of keeping it permanent, keeping it automatic. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. And that's a key distinction. Don't have kids practice something independently if they haven't already shown you that they can do it correctly when you guide them through it. And when you've guided them through it and you see, now she's got it, she can do it independently, then let her practice it independently to build the permanence and the solid nature of it, not to learn how to do it. And if independent practice shows that she's not doing it right, then go back to guided practice. But this is important, independent practice. 5, learning is more likely to occur when the materials are at hand at the time the learner is motivated to engage. It's not simply having the materials present, but they have to be present at the right time. So the implication of that is we don't always know what the right time is going to be, so we have to have lots of stuff available so that when the kid does get motivated for it, it's already there. And then number 6, actually 2 parts to it, A and B. Learning emerges from tasks that are meaningful and tasks that are motivating. And they're meaningful if they mean something, if they have some connection to the learner, if it has them help, if they can do something with it, if they have some purpose, some utility in doing it, that's what makes it meaningful. And it's got to be motivating. You have to be interested in doing it. Now, these are summarized here on page 54 in table 4.1, 6 principles of literacy learning. So you can summarize them right here, but you can go back to the earlier pages and look at them in a little bit more detail. These are the principles that guide why we should do what we do and how we do it. Organizing our classrooms, organizing the space, and organizing the materials. Pay attention here. Why do we use this kind of thing? Why are we thoughtful about how we arrange our classroom? Because it influences how children behave. Classrooms that are inviting, that look nice, that have good arrangement of space. You look at some of the things right here. It talks about accessible storage area, rugs, plants, pillows, lamps, interesting natural materials, curious materials, photographs of children, things that invite the kids into a comfortable, enjoyable, engaging kind of experience. We want to arrange our classrooms that way. We have a tendency we can arrange things for adults, but we need to arrange them more for kids. Many early literacy teachers will use centers. And this is why, I'm going to walk you through some of the reasonings here as to why centers are important and why they can be powerful and how we can make them work well. So the reason for doing centers is that they allow for small groups to work independently or cooperatively, and they allow for child-directed play. It builds their confidence. They can be in charge of their learning. They can be in charge of what they're doing, and they can feel successful about it. They can feel like they're accomplishing something. Now, let's We'll take these here in a little bit more detail. Why do they feel successful? Why do centers help build success? And I want you to point out this piece here on the bottom of page 55 and kind of work through what some of my notes mean. When we have children working in centers, the first big reason why we do that, I put over here number one, is because there's less failure for the kids when they work in centers. Why is there less failure? Well, here's why. If we're doing something that's maybe whole class or not independently directed, when kids have to do the same task in the same way to get the same correct answer at the same time, there are four variables that are going on there. Four things: same task, in the same prescribed way, with the same correct answer at the same time. There's four things interacting there. And if you know anything about how variables interact, with four variables, there are 16 combinations, 16 combinations of how those things can interact with each other. 16 opportunities for failure, 16 different things that can cause kids not to succeed. By doing centers where they don't have to do the same thing at the same time, in the same way, and coming out with the same answers as everybody else, we greatly eliminate those variable combinations, and thus kids have more opportunity to be successful because they can do multiple tasks. They have choices of tasks in different ways with different answers that are correct and at different times. So what might not work time-wise for one kid is okay because it can work differently for a different kid. So there's the first reason why centers are important. They greatly reduce the risk of failure. That doesn't mean that kids are just doing whatever they want and they can just do it in any way they want. No, they're instructed. There are things they need to learn. We'll talk about that here in a moment. But they don't have to do the same exact thing in the same exact way with the same exact answer at the same exact time. They're still going to get to where they need to be, but they have a lot more variation and flexibility of how they can do those 16 possible combinations for success as opposed to 16 combinations that can lead to failure. Reason number two for the importance of centers, they encourage a great deal of play. I see that hugely with my granddaughter. She loves to play all kinds of things with her little animals and toys. She loves the little pet shop. She loves to play imagination games. All of that is building literacy because she talks about it and plays about it. And centers, number three, reason centers can provide opportunities for you to accelerate learning. For the kids that are ready to go on, like the Glenna Sloans, you don't have to drudge them through the routines. You can send them off into other things that allow them to work at even higher levels independently and allows you to work with kids who need a little bit more time with you. Early childhood centers, you can just give this section a little light reading, and then it goes into some discussion about different types of centers and gives you some ideas and some visuals. And it talks about here how enhancing language and literacy activities can happen in the centers, dramatic play centers, literacy centers. And then this table, 4.2 on page 60, is a nice summary of different kinds of centers that you can have and the different kinds of props you can have, things for them there that they can use and work with and do. The veterinarian doctor's office. My granddaughter likes to play veterinarian with her stuffed animals. The office center, the post office center, the library center, the bank center. My granddaughter has a little, in her playroom, has a Starbucks center because we take them, go to Starbucks and she gets a hot chocolate or something. She has a little grocery center. You can think of all the different kinds of centers that might be there and change them throughout the year, adapt them, move them around, different kinds of things at different types of the different times of the year for different kinds of activities. Let's take a look over here at a couple of other comments. You do need to manage the centers. They're not just free play. They have a purpose, they have a structure, and you need to monitor what's going on. So here on the bottom of page 62 and moving on to page 63, it talks a lot about how you can develop checklists. The checklists should be from the literacy stages in chapters 2 and 3 and how you monitor literacy learning. So as the kids work in the play centers, keep track of who's doing what and what tasks are they completing, which centers are they using, which centers are they not using, how long are they staying in each one, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, what kinds of things are they doing, what progress do you see them making. Use clipboards, use checklists. Observing the kids for about 10 minutes at least once a month can give you some valuable information. I've seen teachers who use little magnetic name markers and they put them on a cookie sheet of some kind, and they keep track of which kids are doing which things when, because that's information that you should be monitoring as you monitor their progress through the literacy centers and through the different kinds of literacy stages that they will be progressing. The important concept here towards the end of the chapter on classroom print. They make the distinction, and we need to keep this in mind. There is a difference between classroom print and environmental print. Classroom print is the stuff that's up in the room, and it tends to be, or should be, kid-focused and teacher-focused on things that are happening right there in their lives. How we label things. We have shapes and colors, and we have alphabet words, and we have all kinds of signage and directions and information up in the classroom. Those are good. Environmental print are, as they point out here, they're more like commercial displays that we see out in the world. Billboards, things at the gas station, things up in the grocery store. Kids don't really pay much attention to those kinds of things. The stuff that's environmental print that's out there in the grocery store, at Walmart, at Safeway, any of those those are aimed at adults. They're trying to catch our attention, not the attention of the kids. So we think that if kids are exposed to environmental print out in the world, that will help them, but actually they pay very little attention to that. And when they do pay attention to it, they don't really pay attention to it as print. They think of it more as pictures that identify something, but not as actual print that they would use to read. They read the picture, they don't read the actual print. Print that is in the classroom print, is much more powerful and much more usable to them. So your role then in creating this classroom environment with centers and monitoring what's going on emphasizes these things. You can't just put the materials in front of them and let them go. That's not enough. You need to demonstrate how to use it. Show them how to use the office center, the veterinarian center, the banking center. Engage with them in those centers. Doesn't mean you're going to play at their level, but talk with them about what they're doing. Engage them in conversation. Have them explain to you what's happening and why they're doing it the way they are. Interact with them. Remember, it's social. They need the interaction with you and with each other. Don't take over it. Don't overly correct their language or their products. Model it, demonstrate it, but don't overly correct it. Use things like this. I'm writing about Joey's mom's visit. What are you writing about? Speak with them, talk with them, engage with them, but don't take over their learning. And then lastly, watch for those teachable moments. When you see the kid who's intrigued by something, and you can point out something extra, you can add to it, give them some value-added elements of that, point out another book that they might want to read, do something more with it, helping them pay attention to the teachable moment by watching, observing, demonstrating, and monitoring what's going on. So with that in mind, I leave you with the chapter. I don't know if you've read the chapter first and then want to go back and listen to these comments, or if you do the comments first and then read the chapter. The choice is yours, but do realize that by using centers, you can create some powerful, powerful literacy activities and environments for your kids. Okay, that's all for now. I wish you the best. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back again next week.